All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Happy Juneteenth. My name is Amber Samdahl. I'm the Director of Design and Innovation at PBS Wisconsin. And on behalf of my fellow public media innovators colleagues, Chad Davis and David Huppert from PBS North Carolina, thank you for joining us today. We are public media innovators. We are a NETA peer learning community, and I'll put the link in the chat if you want to learn more about our group. We're excited to have you all here. Before we jump right in with our fantastic presentation today, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping first. As I mentioned, Public Media Innovators is a peer learning community. We do monthly webinars. Chad writes a great newsletter. You can head to our site to sign up for that. And just a little bit of promotion for next month's webinar. I'll put more information in the chat here. In July, we will be joined by Maggie Jackson, who's an author of a book called Uncertain: The Wisdom and Wonder of Being Unsure, which feels very relevant at this moment in time for public media. So if you're curious about that topic, about the book, want to learn how to leverage uncertainty at this moment, we really encourage you all to join. There's information there to sign up for next month's webinar and read more about Maggie's book. But for today, we're excited to be welcoming Dr. Brittne Kakulla from AARP. Today, we're going to be talking about games. I'm just going to set up a little bit of context for the talk. Today, over 205 million Americans play video games, and 28% of them are over the age of 50. So we're going to be exploring and reframing how we think about games and who they're for. Older adults are obviously active gamers, and they're often overlooked by the gaming industry. So that presents a really unique opportunity for public media to fill that gap. We've long embraced the idea of lifelong learning in public media, and I think it's time for us to also be embracing lifelong play as well. So with that, I'm really happy to introduce Dr. Brittne Kakulla. She is a senior research advisor at AARP. In her role, she focuses on how technology and increasingly gaming and intergenerational play supports social connection, accessibility, and engagement amongst older adults. Her research is helping industries, innovators, and hopefully now public media better understand the opportunities to serve the 50-plus gamer. So Brittne will be giving a presentation here. Please feel free to put questions in the chat, and then at the end we'll have time for Q&A, and we'll get those questions answered. So thank you again for joining us today, Brittne. I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for having me here today to talk about one of my passions, which is older gamers, more specifically, the 50-plus gaming audience that you might be overlooking. So here's the agenda. I hope by the end of this, you'll agree that older gamers are an untapped opportunity for public media. So first, we'll just talk about the why games and why gaming, just to give some context to the topic and support for the focus on older gamers. Next, who is the older gamer in terms of market size? What do you need to know about them, their attitudes and behaviors? Then, what do older gamers want when it comes to gaming? And lastly, how can public media think differently about play as an aspect of gaming? So that includes intergenerational play, content, and engagement. Then we'll have time at the end for questions and discussions. And so first, I just want to level set for those who don't know. AARP is not an insurance company. We're an expansive and multifaceted organization that champions advocacy at the national and state level. And we're committed to bridging disparities when it comes to older adults. And that includes technology. We have a state office in every 50 state and U.S. territory with a community of 30 million members and a dedicated force of 40,000 volunteers. We live and breathe adults 50 plus, but membership is open to anyone of any age. So first, let's talk about why games and why gaming. And, Amber had told me that some people might be skeptical about games. And sometimes I get the question, why does AARP care about gaming and gamers? And, my first part of that is always, older gamers are the OG video game players. We're talking about the Oregon Trail, which was created in 1971 by a history teacher, or Pong, which is considered the first commercially successful video game in 1972, or the Atari home console, which was released in 1977. The people who were playing those games then are the older gamers of now, because most older gamers, in fact, two and three, have been playing for decades. So, gaming is a part of today's culture and it's here to stay. At the lizard brain level, fun, joy, play, these are all human desires. From an ethnographic perspective, social connection is an important human need. And gaming is really just a new way to connect with others as well as to express individuality and creativity. Additionally, cultural and technological shifts have made gaming a mainstream and accepted form of entertainment and leisure activity, especially among generations or people who grew up with technology or who see gaming or connecting in virtual spaces as engaging as in real life. Additionally, the availability and accessibility of devices, especially the smartphone, has made it easier than ever for anyone to play a game anywhere. And the variety of games available ensures there's a game for everyone. So there are shooter, word, home decorating, dance, you name it, you could probably find a game for it. And some ethnographies that we've done, which is an observation of human behavior in natural environments to theme up reasons for that. Gaming was actually a gateway to tech adoption. So when we looked at people who were off the grid or felt like they didn't want to be involved with technology, they didn't get it, when they got a device and they were shown the games on that device and they learned how to play them, they now have developed transferable skills that they're using for tech. So once you learn how to click a button in Candy Crush, that's the same way that you can click a button to do a voice to text. So technology, gaming starts to be that tech way to using tech more. And additionally, there's so much variety in the market when we're talking about games and devices, and that access has allowed the industry to grow exponentially. In the last decade, the gaming industry has experienced a 4x growth. Today, it's a $260 billion market industry, and that's larger than movies and music combined. In the US, it's a $113 billion industry, so 43% of the whole gaming market is US. Additionally, in the US, gaming involves 205 million players. So out of 347 population, that includes like people who are babies. So, and everyone across all demographics has gamers. So people are playing games, they're out there. And also, this idea of gamification is another thing that's important. And this is the idea of taking principles of play or gaming and applying them to other activities such as learning, task management, or health compliance. And gamification taps into some of the same social dynamics of gaming and play, and it has real life impact. So, your loyalty rewards program at the grocery store, that's actually a form of gamification. If you sign up and you collect these points and you do these things or you buy this product, then you can earn rewards. It's a game. So, for brands, gamification has been shown to grow engagement, increase purchases, increase foot traffic, boost customer retention, accelerate loyalty program participation, enhance time spent on site or in app, and uncover valuable consumer insights. So, but more specifically, from a business and market standpoint, games offer a lot of opportunity for brands. So, one, they can allow brands to connect with new or hard to reach consumers. So, again, thinking about those loyalty rewards programs, that's gamification. And who doesn't like free stuff? So, people who might not have wanted to engage with a product or with a company, they might like free stuff. So, that's a way to reach them. Another thing that brands that have a game or are embedded in game brands drives awareness and loyalty. So, for example, brands that have immersed themselves in games like Minecraft or Fortnite have experienced significant brand boosts. For example, the brand Elf Beauty, they launched an activation in Roblox and they've created this like mini entrepreneurial school. So it's a where you're running a business, but you can link your Elf Beauty Squad rewards account. You can get freebies, you can purchase products, you can engage with the brand in the game. So there's like all this activation there. So this game launched in November of 2023. By April of 2024, Elf reported 22 million engagements with their brand, 50,000 new loyalty signups, and they've enhanced their digital and real-world commerce capabilities because they're learning about products and things that consumers are interested in. And actually, this year they just launched another financial literacy game in Roblox. So, thinking about Elf, that awareness and that engagement piece is good for them but it also provides something that is so important for brands nowadays, and that's primary data about their customers. And having that primary data helps brand make better products and services and positions them as a digital leader with those consumers, which is another benefit of games. Because as we continue to develop in society and tech becomes more embedded in life, people will expect more seamless digital and physical experiences. So brands that are testing and learning now are going to be better set up to meet those tech experience expectations in the future. So, that's the why of gaming from a business perspective, but there's also that sociological, social mission, human perspective. If we zoom out, gaming is really an aspect of meaningful play or leisure. And the National Institute of Health reports there's robust research that shows people who participate in hobbies and social and leisure activities may actually be at lower risk for health problems, reduced loneliness, decreased dementia, better cognitive function, memory, self-esteem, and overall quality of life than those who do not. So, and in fact, there are documented studies that have shown some real life therapeutical and physiological benefits of playing video games on individuals. So, for example, Pokemon Go players increased their daily step count by 1,400 steps. So, that was a 25% rise over baseline activity levels. Another study found that 20 minutes of casual gaming for a month cut depressive symptoms by 57% among adults 18 plus. So some of the other benefits that research have found includes reducing loneliness, improving brain activity, and reducing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And older adults intuitively agree with this. Regardless of age, we found that gamers and non-gamers, 50 plus, see the benefits of play, and about 7 in 10 say that play is important for healthy aging. Women slightly more than men. In fact, gaming is a type of play, and many gamers feel that gaming benefits them. More specifically, we see as gamers get older, more feel that gaming is good for them as they age, and gaming helps reduce stress and anxiety. Again, talking specifically about video games for the 50 plus, the benefits of play for them are mental, emotional, and physical improvements. We found that 8 in 10 older adults feel that gaming helps them in some kind of way. And 2 in 3, so 67% of gamers say gaming helps or benefits them with some form of mental improvement. And some researchers have argued that playing video games actually allows people to achieve a state of flow. And flow is this idea of when your brain is in an optimal experience where nothing else matters. So you're able to focus on one thing. And this state has been found to reduce stress and improve emotional well-being. So that's kind of the context of the why of gaming. And it's really trifold. It's for fun, for business impact, and for real life results in human physical and emotional well-being. So, now you're totally convinced about gaming. The question is like, what does that have to do with older gamers and why? And who is the older gamer? Well, older gamers are a growing market because older adults are a growing market. Between now and 2030, which is just in 5 years, the under 40 age population in the US is projected to decline, while the 40 plus population will grow. So in 2030, half of the US population will be 40 or older. And between now and 2030, 11,000 boomers are turning 65 every day. By 2030, all boomers will be 65 or older, all Gen X will be 50 plus, and millennials will start turning 50. So you can't ignore a demographic this large. And one of the things that we've found that's consistently important to older adults, they value independence and freedom. And staying sharp mentally helps them to live those values. And indeed, we found that among adults age 45 plus, 4 in 5 believe that it's important to keep your brain active and to learn something for yourself. And 7 in 10 say that learning something keeps them vibrant. So, we've got all these older adults who are going to be in society. And what are they doing? Well, one thing they're doing is they're continuing the hobbies that they've had and enjoying the entertainment the way that they've done. And gaming is part of that. So the 50 plus gamer audience is expected to grow 34%, and the 40 plus gamer size is also expected to grow 20% to 95 million adults. If you look at the chart, we can see that the 40 plus crowd is actually approaching parity to younger gamers whose growth will be relatively flat over the next 5 years. So, indeed, they're continuing what they're doing. They're looking for new stuff. And, another data point to that is that they're already searching for games for them. We see that growth in people searching games for older people is up 300% since 2020. And, in fact, right now, 52 million adults age 50 plus are gamers. And that's about half of older adults. And AARP has been looking at older gamers for a while because gaming is important to us on the three fronts that I mentioned, for business, for our brand, and for our social impact mission. So gaming among the 50 plus has continued to grow. So we first looked at gamers in 2016. We found about 36% of 50 plus were gamers. In 2020, that number is at 45%. Recently, the ESA released figures, and they're estimating 50% of the 50 plus are gamers, so that's that 52 million number. But I found consistent findings in our annual tech trends, which was this year as well, that 50% of adults 50 plus are using their smartphone for gaming. And when we talk about older gamers, one thing that we've consistently found is that among the 50 plus, women are more gamers than men, and they continue to game more frequently. So over half of female gamers age 50 plus play every day, compared to a third of male gamers. And smartphones are the device of choice for older gamers, and most play every day. And in fact, 30% play only from a smartphone. So I want to make a point here. Whenever you're talking about people, particularly large groups of people, it's not a monolith. They're not all the same. There's not one type of gamer. There's not one type of older gamer. We know this. So in our study, we took the large group of older adults and gamers that we had, and we did some modeling to identify the 50 plus gamer segment. So I'm not going to go into like too much detail on how the sausage is made, but I'll tell you, we looked at responses to 6 key areas of focus to identify differences, similarities, and groupings. So the 6 variables were age, device ownership, gaming frequency, gaming motivation, importance, top motivators, and reasons for playing. So based on those questions, we saw 5 distinct groups that we placed on a spectrum from less passionate about gaming to most passionate. So I'm going to quickly go through those segments. So first, we're calling the dabblers. And this is the group that plays every once in a while, usually when they're bored. This is our oldest group of gamers. These are the people who are like, oh, I have a game on my phone. I'm sitting here, I'm waiting. Oh, I might as well just play a game. Some play on mobile, but most play on PC. Next, and accounting for 1/3 of all 50 plus gamers, this is the stereotypical casual gamer. This is the mainstreamer. They play pretty frequently, but they don't really feel tied to gaming. They're playing for enjoyment and for mental stimulation. So if we're thinking Wordle, this is like the key group of Wordle players. Our third group, we're calling the indulgers. This group, they play daily, often casino or card games, and sometimes they feel guilty about how frequently they play. But their play is often motivated by reducing stress. So at this point, with these 3 segments, we've addressed most of the 50 plus market because 73% of older gamers fall in the first 3 categories. So the last 2 groups are smaller, but they're groups that are more serious about gaming. So the fourth group we're calling the enthusiasts. And this group, they enjoy games, they enjoy gaming. They play a lot of gaming genres compared to some of the other groups. So they'll just, try stuff, try lots of different things. They play for entertainment and they want a story and a compelling gameography. So they want a universe, they want to go deep into it. And then finally, the fifth group, we're calling the immersives. These are the die-hard gamers. This group is passionate about gaming. They see it as part of their identity. They've been playing the longest. These are the heaviest players. They play from a variety of devices. They play the most complicated genres, and they spend the most money when it comes to gaming. So small but mighty. So, I know I just told you that not all gamers are the same. Don't think about them as a monolith. But just to like circle back on that, there are some things that they can agree on as a group. And, we know that while some segments prefer specific genres over others, in general, older gamers play everything. So, but there are some specific large group genre preferences. And those top three are what you see here. So, puzzle and logic games like a Candy Crush, that's the top choice. Next, card and tile, so like a Mahjong or Solitaire. And then third, words. So, again, like a Wordle. These are the top preferences and the top played games by older gamers. And in our previous research, so we used to group Word with Tile. So Word and Tile games were together. But there's this little game that came out called Wordle, and that basically like blew the category up. So we had to break that out and look at it specifically by itself. And again, going back earlier, when I was talking about the business case of gaming, like I think Wordle is a perfect example of that impact. This is a real life example of the power of gaming. So this chart shows downloads of the New York Times apps, the entire portfolio. And the yellow is Wordle and how that impacts the whole portfolio. So we can see the outsized impact of the Games app on the overall portfolio of downloads for the Times after it was acquired in January 2022. So it brought in a whole bunch of new people, new audiences, and people downloading the app, which is again giving them new data. So, one thing that all gamers can also agree on is some of the reasons for playing. And fun is number one for everyone. So, young and old, like if it's not fun, what's the point? Why are you doing it? Obviously. But one of the things that is unique to older gamers and that we have consistently found is that they see relaxation and staying sharp or mental acuity as highly important to them for gaming compared to younger adults. And in fact, we see that staying sharp is one of the top reasons for the 50 plus to say that they game, and it's not in the top at all for younger gamers. So again, it's that idea of I'm doing this, keeping my brain sharp, constantly learning something, being mentally challenged. And, in fact, when we trended the motivations for gaming over the years among the 50 plus gamers, as they age, this intrinsic motivation for gaming really just grows in importance. And so here we can see that reducing stress has grown significantly. In 2019, 57% said reducing stress was a reason for gaming. In 2022, that number has gone up to 71%. And I didn't, there's like a whole lot of data in the main larger report if you want to look at that. We've got some stuff showing different groups and how they're gaming and lots of different engagements. So I didn't go into the data about groups in this, but some of the groups that increased their gaming behavior and those, stress was important to them post-COVID included women, blacks, and those in their 50s. And, if you think about it, these are all prime groups that have likely been under extreme stress over the last few years. If you think about caregiving and civil unrest and economic uncertainty, these groups are likely impacted the most by all the stuff that's going on. And many of them have turned to gaming to help reduce stress from that. So, lastly, I want to make the case for intergenerational play. Most older gamers play solo, but when they do play with others, they're playing with children or grandchildren. And about half of older gamers are grandparents. So, now you should have an idea of why gaming, why older gamers, and who they are. So, hopefully, the juices are flowing and you're thinking about like how to tap into this market. Well, I think to do that, it's important to make sure you know what they want. And one thing that older gamers want is games that are inclusive or representative of who they are as older gamers. They want games with features and characters that are customizable for older adults. In fact, 3 and 4 agree that video games should be more inclusive with older adults. And additionally, most older gamers feel like an afterthought in the gaming industry. So while that doesn't impede their interest, I definitely think it's resulted in a marginalized audience that has significant potential because older gamers, that's what they want. They want to be included and not marginalized. But right now, many do not feel reflected in the marketing, the game design, or the gameplay, such as character appearances, the storylines, or the strategy development. And we see that as age increases, more older gamers feel marginalized by the industry. So when gamers are in their 40s, about half feel that games aren't designed for them, but by age 70, three-fourths feel that games aren't designed for them. So older gamers want to be included, but not in a stereotypical way. So in some of the social listening that we've done, and that's looking at long form social content, blogs, Reddit posts, things like that. What older gamers are talking about, they've noted this. Like they realize they feel ignored, they see that they're being ignored, but if the option is a stereotypical representation of them, then they don't want it. So like, they would love to see like an older character in Mario Brothers. But if you're going to do like a Grandpa Mario and you're going to make him like super slow and, he can't do what the other characters do, and then it's like, don't bother. So that's important to be included, but not stereotyped or marginalized. And I mentioned before that they feel that they're not represented in games. So we did an analysis this year, and one of the things that we found is that that feeling is a fact. So we analyzed the top games from the Steam, which is a gaming platform, the top 100 games of 2024, and looked at age representation among the characters. And representation was missing for preset and customizable characters. So for the games where the characters are already set and you can choose who you want to play, only 7% had some type of characterization that looked like they were an older character that could be 50 plus. So those are the games where it's already set. And then there are some games where you can customize your character. You can be who you want to be. So in those games that allow customization, only 44% allowed some type of customization where you could present your character as being older, as age 50 plus. So, it's not just a feeling that they're not being recognized. It's a fact. We see that it's a thing out there. So now I'm going to play a comment from an older gamer in her words about age inclusion in gaming.
I think it is very important that the gaming industry starts including elderly folks in the gaming world. Not complicated, brain enhancing games, things that keep them from being bored and lonely, things that keep them off of dating websites just to talk to people that are going to take advantage of them and steal their money, games that and keep them from alcoholism and suicide and loneliness, things that are easy for them to do, things that are easy to understand, things that don't cost them money, things that they can do to kill the boredom because our bodies break down and I'm going to be 60 and I can't move like I used to. And it keeps me from thinking about all the loneliness that living alone when you get older brings on. So and it has to be marketed correctly.
So, as we just heard the in the video, she was talking about, older gamers, they want to be in the gaming world, give them games for them and give them games that they can play. And that's, important to them. That's what they want. Older gamers they struggle finding games made for them. Those in their 70 plus are actually more likely to say they struggle with finding games made for them. So 39% agree that they can find games for them compared to 57% of those in their 40s. And they also want games that they can jump in and out of, but that still challenge them and let them improve. So again, going back to that staying sharp mental acuity aspect of brain health. So they want games that reward skill and not pay for play. So you get to the new next level based on how good you are, not because you paid another $5 or whatever, or bought the skin. So, here we see a list of some specific game features that are important, but if you notice, like all of these resonate again with the motivation of older gamers, which is that continual mental sharpness and that learning. So they want games that they feel like provide them some type of cognitive benefit. They're easy to jump in with intuitive instructions, and it's not going to create a lot of mental burden to play or to remember how to play when you jump in and jump out of it. And more specifically, they want features that encourage inclusivity regardless of skill and dexterity. So that includes things like font size, adjustable difficulty settings, being able to modify the background noise. These are all things that make games customizable and inclusive. And lastly, older gamers want real and personal connections to games. So again, going back to the social listening and some of those natural conversations, gamers were talking about they want connections that facilitated by the gaming or the content themselves. So a multi-generational or junior version of the games that they play, so they can play it with younger generations. They want private communities where they can talk to other people their age to talk about gaming and not feel like they're going to be ostracized when they're in some of the younger spaces and talking about gaming. And I think these last three are in public media's wheelhouse because one of the things it says they want mixed media stories. So a game that's an extension of a book or a movie or a show. So it really allows them to continue their engagement with a topic or content to go deeper in, or a new perspective within a known universe. So again, it's about going deeper in some content that you have a connection with, or even just better storylines. Like some of the games, they feel like are just a money play, and they're not really engaging because the story is not really engaging. They just want you to pay for play. And that's also one of the reasons we've found that retro gaming is popular with older adults because a lot of them feel like the games from before, they gave you that context and you had to be good at it to pass. And there was more of a story there than just like slick graphics and fast play. So, thinking about these last three, I think some of the public media content has really great storytelling built into it, and that definitely could translate to a game. So, now I want to give the last word about what older gamers want to older gamers.
People who design these games believe that their audience is the younger generation, the teenagers, the younger kids. We want to feel included in what's going on in that industry.
We like to be entertained. We like to be challenged. We like a good escape. And we like it to be simple enough for us to understand. So those are some of the things I think that might make video games more targeted to someone who's older.
The other thing is to not give up on us in the more sophisticated gaming environments and offer things that, well, I don't know, maybe like historical exploration games where basically you get to be like a reporter in some situation and see events as they kind of happen.
I would ask the gaming industry to come up with more immersive games that don't necessarily have an end game, but that will be a perpetual universe that will just keep going and you just keep building, because when you have games like that, you keep your audience engaged.
Keep it up and give us more, because we love it. And the vintage, heartstring stuff from our childhood, that really is neat, and we like that.
So that leads to the explicit question in our last piece: how can public media think differently about play? So these next two slides are really just some thought starters that, I've come up with, not comprehensive, open for discussion, but just thinking about public media. So in 2024, I released a gaming report titled Gaming for All, and that focused on inclusivity and accessibility for older adults, like what they want and need in order to continue playing. And I think that public media could build on this and really reframe it with play, but under that same lens. So embody play for all. And really, it's, make that as an inclusive, intergenerational, and health promoting public good. So this isn't just saying, creating a game for some existing IP, which is a suggestion, but this is thinking broader about play and how to make that cross generations. So this could be something like spotlighting play as a part of healthy aging through conversations and programming, and encouraging or sponsoring intergenerational gaming or game nights in local communities. Also championing diverse and unique voices in gaming. Sometimes our publications will run gaming content, and they always will include popular gamers on social media. So like there's this one guy, Grandpa Gamer, who's on YouTube former military, former sniper, 72 years old, and he likes to play shooter games. So he shows himself playing the shooter games and he gives tips about, being a sniper and how you would have to play the game as a shooter. So, things like that, championing those voices and bringing that to light. On the business side, I think there's an opportunity to gamify engagement. What about a PBS rewards program where you could earn swag or a shout out in the magazine or something like that? And then, of course, there is the developing actual games from the content. So, for example, the Ken Burns Library is a rich resource. And we know that history is a known loved topic among older adults. And it's also a topic that grandparents want to share with their grandchildren. So, you could create a time traveling history game or a trivia game just on one of the specific videos, or even monetize some of the narratives with game developers based on the content. Because again, they want games that are richer. You've got all of this information, this context historically. Why not monetize that? So, these are just some ideas that I was, trying to think of how to give some like concrete ideas. And there are a lot of like ideation or might we activities that you guys could do as well to come up with tactics for incorporating games. But the biggest thing that I would say is really just to recognize the opportunity and where public media has a permission to play, and then just to start. So this spring, I was on a South by panel on gaming, and one of my panelists, Yost, he is a NYU professor about gaming, and he wrote this article on how brands can use games to build relationships. And what he suggests is a crawl, walk, run framework. And basically, crawl is where you start small, you test where to play, sponsor small events, do some in-game ads, see what you get, measure that, and then iterate. A walk is where you actually test different genres of games to engage different audiences, identify new audiences, come up with new, different messages for different audiences and see what you get again. And the run, that's the full sprint embrace of gaming as a form of media, creating branded games, including game campaigns in new content. So gaming is really baked in to the strategy when it comes to media. So, I was looking out there at just like what was available for public media. There's so much good content on the PBS Kids, but thinking again, like from a gaming perspective and play, why not extend that to families? So instead of PBS Kids games, PBS Family games, and for some of the games, it could be just a slight tweak. So one of the games, there's like this author game, and it's like, you're making a healthy meal. It's called Arthur's Lunchomatic. So you're like making a healthy meal, and you've got the lunch lady and the teacher, and you like pick what they're telling you to play, and it has to be like a good healthy meal. But something like that, you could literally just add a multiplayer component to that with the parent being the lunch lady, and now you're competing on who's making the healthiest meal, and that's making that intergenerational. So, small tweaks like that could be added to things that are already existing to broaden the idea of play. And then, again, this is just for disclosure. I use ChatGPT to reimagine what that like PBS family would look like. So that's what that image is. So that was my last slide. Before we get to questions, I did want to show, so we've put together, AARP has put together a page with a lot of the resources related to gaming that I've talked about. So that's this Gaming Without Age Limits. And then this deck that I just presented, here's the QR code for that as well. So I'll leave that up for a minute, and now I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Brittany. That was fantastic. A lot of really great data. I look forward to diving into it again and looking at all the details there. We did have some questions come up, and I encourage everyone to throw more questions in the chat. First, there was some questions about VR. Have you seen any data on older gamers using VR? And a part two to that is, in particular, any data around exercise as a motivation for gaming as well?
So the first part for the VR, it still continues to be niche. And I think there are a couple things. One, the content is like not really there. There's not that much there if you go to some of the VR stuff. So there's a content piece, and the price points as well. Like those devices are still pretty pricey, pretty expensive. So another aspect of tech adoption is being able to like try it out. And the price points for some of those VR devices, it's not very easy to like, oh, let me try this out. And if I don't like it, then, I could, I tried it and I don't like it. So, adoption for VR, it continues to be moderate. In their annual tech trends study, it's below 10%. And it's been drips and draps for the last 5 years, I think, since we've looked at it. And then the second question was about.
Exercise as a motivation for gaming. Have you seen any information about that?
So it could be because intrinsically, like, is this doing something for me, like is benefiting me? But we've looked at so I've done another study looking at health apps and looking at so why people will adopt that and why they stop it. And one of the reasons that people do not, or they stop using like a health app, which again is using gamification, if you think about it, is they start to feel bad if they're not reaching the goals, or they feel like they're being too, tied to the device, like they're not doing it for intrinsic value, they're doing it for this external motivation. And again, that brings up some type of like negative feeling, or they feel like it's intrusive, like there's too many notifications, it's getting on my nerves. It's like it's all the time. It's like, oh. So that there is an opportunity there, but it needs to be positioned with the right audience. Like there are some, again, there was also some segmentation with the health apps as well. So there are some people who are like the ambassadors for using technology for health, and those are the ones to focus on, because for most technology, most products in general, people learn from friends and family. So social media is at this point it's like the second thing, but friends and family is where most people learn about new products and services, new apps, all of that. So focusing on those ambassadors who are using the tech in a certain way, or those apps, that's a way to boost adoption. But just saying like, oh, we're going to focus on, health, the health aspects of this is not as much of a value add as the focus on the intrinsic cognitive benefit, improving your mental well-being. You're doing it for you, that aspect.
Good. Yeah, that's great. And I can relate to a lot of those questions you were hearing about reactions to health apps. We had another great question. I will just read the full statement here. I noticed recently that the New York Times added a games tab to their core New York Times app, which I thought was an interesting acknowledgement that for some users at least, having a whole separate app was a barrier to the games content reaching a wider audience. When we all think about integrating games into our content offerings within public media, what kinds of scaffolding should we be thinking about to accommodate and welcome in older gamers, the kind that will make them feel welcome? What should we be thinking about?
So that is a UX question, and you would need to look at what your consumers like, what are they experienced with and what's their expectation. So like AARP has an app, it's called AARP Now, and that's the same experience that we had. So before on the app, you had like news, you had events, and then you could click the link to go out to the games. But people were like, okay, why do I need to do all that if I just want to play the game here? So they have actually remodeled it to make that link to be right there, because for some people, that's all they care about. So it really depends on the users and what the expectation is. And I think, with the times, that's probably what they found as well. You saw how, the portfolio went up once they introduced Wordle. So some people, that's the way to engage them. And another thing with like our app, that games piece up front is again another gateway to additional adoption, because you're right there. You maybe you came for the game, but then you saw something else that was interesting, so now you're looking at that. But again, that content is like right there. So it's like I don't have like a silver bullet recommendation, that because that's a UX issue.
I don't know, that's great advice. All right, next question. What does the data say about each decade of mature gamers? Do 50s want something different than 60s versus older decades? Half of the older population have played games since Pong, whereas the older generations would not have. So I would like to see what the voices are saying from each decade, which would allow for media makers slash storytellers to avoid falling into the trap of lumping all older gamers together. Much like you said, it's not a monolith.
Yeah. So, the first thing I would say is it's not so much decade because age is not the factor. It's all the other variables. And my area of focus is technology and older adults, and that's one of like the main myth busts that I always have to do. Like, don't just assume the age of someone makes them like they're afraid of adopting tech or they're not going to do X, Y, and Z. So age is a factor, but it's not a key driver. It's the attitudes, the experiences, the people in their life that are exposing them to new things. So there's all this like other variables involved. I can say like generally for gaming, like we see the genres that older adults like to play. There are some differences there compared to younger gamers. And in that 2024 report that was focused on like accessibility and inclusivity, there are some age-related declines that everyone experiences, including older gamers, that sometimes makes it harder to play some of the games. So that's their, idea. The games are not designed for me because if the game is focused on a fast play, on, small buttons and you need to do this, do that, as you age, your response time gets slower. Your vision gets harder. So there's like some modes in games where they consider it a cheat if you change the contrast. So because older adults, the vision's there, but changing the contrast is somehow a cheat. So it's things like that. So it again, it goes back to um, like what is finding permission to play and then seeing how the audience responds to that. But in general, and another thing with older adults is retro. So that's something that is of interest to them. But retro is also a generational thing. So what is my retro, as a Gen X, is very different than, a retro of those original Pong players. So it's always the first piece is to understand the consumer and find out where there's permission to play and then work in a non-stereotypical way. And you do that by the age inclusive design, which is including those people in all aspects of the ideation. So as you're thinking about, games, then you've talked to older consumers. They're part of that conversation. As you're designing it, you've included them in the UX as well. They're part of that conversation. The marketing includes them as well. So they're part of that, the visuals. So it all ties together.
Mhm. You mentioned the myth busting. I was wondering, you talked a little bit about this in the South by Southwest talk, but could you maybe share a little bit about the typical stereotypes and do some myth busting for us today and why those
Oh, yeah.
stereotypes aren't necessarily true?
So, well, the first was that they're not gaming, and we already see that, about half of the 50 plus, they play some type of game. And then next it's like, okay, well, what type of game are they playing? Casual gamers is the top group, so there is some truth to the Candy Crush grandma. My mom plays that, my grandma plays it too. I've played it when they ask, but they're more than that. So again, it's like there might be some aspect of truth in there, but go beyond that. The next is that their devices are old, so they can't do certain things. In the tech trends, we found that actually 62% of older adults have a device a smartphone that was purchased in the last 2 years. So that's a relatively new phone. They can do all the new apps. They can download the stuff. It's not that they can't use that technology or that it's not accessible to them. They could do that if they see the value for it and if they if it's presented in a way that is meaningful to them. And I think that's another disconnect with the industry in general and older adults because older consumers, technology is a tool. So it should do something, it should help me, it should serve a function. There's this idea in industry that almost like shiny is best, what's new is best. And sometimes that what's new is like, doesn't even have a use case, but it's just cool because it's new. So you should want to use it. But, the older consumer is like, well, what is the point of this? Like, what am I doing with this? How has this helped me? I think that's one of the barriers that we've seen in AI adoption. And I've got this AI study that I'm working on. It's like completely not related to gaming, but a lot of the AI stuff has been positioned as, okay, it's for the consumer to figure out the use case. And that doesn't really work for older adults because it's a tool. So tell me, what is this tool going to do for me? Like, how can I use that? So I'm the consumer to figure it out. So if we position it more as a jobs to be done, there's a reason for this tool, then I think we could see greater adoption of some of that technology because now it's like, oh, okay, so that's what this is going to do for me. This is how this is going to help me. Not that it's just like some new cool thing that I should play with because I've got a million other things to do. I don't have time to just sit here and play with something because it's cool. So Yost says this thing older he calls younger gamers time rich, money poor, and older gamers are the reverse. So they're time poor. They don't want to sit around and play with it and figure out how to go back to the game and I forgot how to do this piece and all that. So, that's part of the consideration as you're thinking about these consumers.
That's a great way to frame it. I had a question. You mentioned intergenerational games and the importance of intergenerational play, and I know you've done some studies around that. Could you talk a little bit more about, how intergenerational games could serve as inspiration for what we're doing? Public media, we serve really broad audiences, content for kids and content for older adults and everyone in between. How should we be thinking about that, or where should we be finding inspiration in that space?
So there's a lot. So the intergenerational play, I think the first aspect is connection. So it helps with this idea of social connection. So there's engagement between the older adult and the younger adult. They're teaching something, and it also gives like self-esteem for the younger the child because they've got some power in the situation. They're able to teach, so that helps with self-esteem. But in general, when we've looked at like grandparents, so like I did a huge grandparent study several years ago, and some of the values that older adults want to give to their grandchildren, it's like family. They want to teach the values that they have about managing money, about their culture. So intergenerational play is a way to have a connection in a fun way, but to also share some of those things that are valued with the next generation. So, but again, making it fun because, no one wants to be lectured at or, talked down to. So it's a way to engage and a way to facilitate that social connection. And there's another study that looked at uh, grandparents by age, and there's a disconnect, synchronous and asynchronous communication. So when children are younger, the grandchildren are younger, that connection is relatively easy, even though it has to be facilitated by the parent, because you can call them on the phone, they'll talk to you, they're right there. But as they get older, there's less parent involvement, so there needs to be more of a connection with this asynchronous type of engagement. So it's like learning how to text message. And gaming is a place where you could have asynchronous or synchronous engagement. So again, keeping that connection and keeping that that relationship, like building that.
Oh, I love that. Well, we are just about at time. I wanted to say again, a big thank you, Brittne, for your expertise in sharing all of your incredible learnings and wisdom with all of us in public media. I hope we all can take this and march forward. I will say for everyone attending, feel free to email. I will put emails in the chat for myself and Chad Davis. If you want to continue conversations around gaming, we are looking to start a group to kind of take this movement forward. Here's my email in the chat. And then lastly, I'm going to once again put in a plug for the July webinar for you to register there. But thank you, Brittne. This has
Put mine in
been
the chat too. Anyone wants to
wonderful.
reach out, talk more about gaming. It was on that last slide, but I had the link. I can send you that to include.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining. This has been fantastic. I learned a lot and I'm going to be absorbing and processing for a while.
All right,
Thank you
thanks.
so much, Brittany.
All right,
Thanks, everyone.
yeah.